honey don't need no truth, got plenty now, it grows on trees. God, I'm glad it's not a race I'd lose.
So you will hear tonight my story of hitchhiking in Europe for 140 days, because this is what I did on the summer of 2015. And the specialty of this trip was that I only had 100 euros and a backpack. And you might have found out already that 100 euros is not a lot of money, so I couldn't spend on two major things. One was transportation, so I had to walk on my feet or hitchhike. And the second thing was accommodation. I couldn't rent a hotel room or a hostel because my money would have run out before time. So I had to stay in my tent, and I had to use social networks to find other people's houses to stay in. But before I go into further details, let me tell a few words about why I did this thing. Next, please. It had a few reasons. First is that you may have heard before that someone says, I just don't feel like I fit into my life. I would need some change. I would like to see how people live in different countries, experience different cultures, and overall I just don't feel good about my life. This is what I felt exactly in 2015, close to summer. And before, I used to live almost 3 years in England, and that was the first time in my life that I heard that people go on travels or holidays with only a backpack for a few days, really cheap flight, and really on a budget. And before that, I thought traveling and holidays is strictly hotels, resorts, flights, and taxi, and all these setup things. And I didn't even hear about these adventurous people who go to hitchhike and travel with a backpack. But a few of my colleagues said, once a Spanish guy said, oh, I go to Budapest, can you recommend me some places because I know you're Hungarian? And I was like, yeah, but like, how do you manage luggage and stuff like that? We went into these details, and he said, I only take a backpack, and it was no bigger than a school backpack. And I was like, how do you do that? He said, it's only 2 days, so I just put in some t-shirts and underwear, and that's it. And I was like, wow, people do that? And from that point on, I wanted to try how it is to travel on a budget and with only a backpack. But because I didn't really have much money, because that was a time before my travels when I moved back from England and I started a business with my friends, so all my savings went into that startup. And after a few months, even though I really enjoyed doing that web shop, which was about shoes, and the specialty and the interesting stuff about this business was that none of us with my friend had experience in online retail or shoes. So it was destined to success because we didn't know what we're doing, and we were quite good at it. But after a few months, I felt like this is a job. I really enjoyed starting up a business because day by day I had to challenge myself. I had to overcome certain difficulties which I didn't know how to solve, but that was the fun part, that I figured out how to solve them. Once we were set and we started selling shoes, and the orders came in, and we deliver shoes, then post stories and advertisements on Facebook, and that repeated day by day, I felt like that's a job again. And I don't like jobs, really. So I was like, I think this is just the time to quit and do that travel thingy, because people tend to procrastinate and putting off their dreams or what they want to accomplish in life. And I felt like if I don't do it now, then when will I do it? Who knows? So that was one reason why I went on this journey that later turned out that changed my life pretty significantly. And the other thing was that I heard so many times that people say, I wish I could travel. I wish I had the money. I wish I had the time. I wish I had the opportunity. And I felt like, well, I don't have time beside my business. I don't have the money. And I don't have the opportunity, so this should be the perfect time to travel. So I quit my business or job because I didn't, so I had time, like unlimited time from that time on, so I made myself unemployed. Then I didn't have money, so I had to sell something, obviously. So I sold my iPhone, which was a different iPhone back then, obviously. And I received some money and I bought a tent because I didn't have a tent and I didn't have a backpack, so I borrowed a backpack from a friend. And after all, I had like 100 euros. That was all my fortune at that time. So I thought I need to manage all my travels with 100 euros and let's see what I can do. So, because I never hitchhiked before, I only saw that people in films do this next to the major road or highway, and people in cars stop. So I thought, if that's not a made-up thing only in films, that it should work for me. So so I packed the backpack which a friend gave me, and I went to the entrance of the M7 highway that goes to Balaton. And I even made a cardboard saying Balaton, because I thought I'm going to be specific then, always writing on the next stop. And I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit nervous. I packed all my life in a backpack, I had a really tiny money with me, and I was heading to this highway with my backpack and thinking, I would like to go to Portugal, because that's the end of Europe, the most western point of Europe. I would like to reach that. And then what comes next, who knows? I don't know. I didn't have a plan. All my plan was to get there. Funny thing, that was a Sunday morning in July, probably 19th, and really early morning. I went to Székelymanter to catch a bus that takes me to the highway, and you wouldn't believe who turned up there. A guy with a backpack just like mine, and he had this strange outfit that those guys wear who go to the trees and build camps, and I don't know how you call them, cserkész. And he says, yeah, where are you going? And I was like, to Portugal, that's my idea at least. Where are you going? And he said he was here to an event and he's going home to Germany. And he's going to hitchhike, but he did it before, it works, so he's okay with that. And I was like, thank you, universe. That was a really nice of you. That made me a bit calmer about the thing. So two of us went to the highway. I used my cardboard and I pulled up. It was just after a petrol station. So I thought I at least had the logic that if someone wants to stop, they need like a place to stop with the cars. So I figured out that after the entrance of the petrol station, there is a little bit of sideway that people can stop with cars. So I stood there because I thought that's the most logical way to stand as a hitchhiker. And I stood there about 20 minutes and nothing happened. No one really cared. And after all, it was a really strange feeling that I felt like I'm in the shop window and selling myself, trying to suggest people that you could stop and pick me up in your car and take me where you're going. But nothing happened, and I didn't even know if it's good or bad, because I have never tried before. So I didn't know that 20 minutes is good or bad. 5 minutes later, a girl turned up, seemed like a little bit more experienced than me, and she stood at the other side of the entrance, which to me at least seemed like a less convenient place to hitchhike. I don't know whether it's because it was a better place or because she was a girl, but she was picked up in like 3 minutes. And I was like, well, it definitely works because it worked for her. I might try her place. So I walked there and I was picked up in 2 minutes. So that somehow worked. And I was picked up by 2 really lovely guys who were going on a family holiday, meeting their parents at Balaton. Picked me up with a really nice BMW, and I was in the back seat. We started chatting. They asked where I'm going, and I said just to Portugal. They said they can't take me there, but they can take me to Alsors. And they offered me a chocolate bakery thing, swirl, chocolate swirl, kakaós csiga. And I felt like, wow, this is the life. I'm actually traveling with someone else's cars. I get fed. Seems like a nice journey. And we got to Balaton, and I got off, and I went to a park, put down my polyfoam, and I had a nap because I had to rest for this big stress and these big travels. So I went to a park and sleep a little bit. I woke up and had this terrible feeling. I felt like, it wasn't even a feeling, it was more like thoughts. My mind came up and said, like, are you serious? Do you think you can get to Portugal with 100 euros in a backpack? You never did it before. Like, why do you think it can happen? Like, what if you run out of money? What if you get robbed? And all these things and came up, and it felt terrible. I felt like, oh, I could go home. I could go home, no one would know. Because I didn't even post it on Facebook or something. I just left in the English way. I had to get really rational and turn these things off and say, well, I'm in a civilized continent. If I run out of money, I can go to a police station. And if I get robbed, I could do the same thing. If I run out of money, I have family and friends. Hopefully they would help me out. I had a bank card at least with me, empty, but anyone could have transferred money. And I could get rid of these fears because I convinced myself there is nothing really to be afraid of. And I realized it happens every day. We had these negative thoughts, questioning ourselves. And we need to rationally convince ourselves that we're not going to die, probably. It's not going to be that bad. We at least try something new, and if we fail, then is there anything we can lose? I don't think so. So I started walking on the bicycle way that goes around Balaton, and I wanted to get to the Croatian border. That was my first milestone. I thought if I can get there, I can probably get to anywhere. So let's see that. I spent a few nights in a tent beside Balaton. It was really convenient. People did that, but I was doing it on the streets, which is technically illegal. But I looked up the regulation on how is it to camp on a street, and the regulation says if a policeman spots you and asks you to leave, they need an assignment, a permission to make you leave. But even if they get this, you have 24 hours to take your building down. So I thought 24 hours I can spend the night or spend the day anywhere I want. So it's like legally almost right to do this. And the only thing was I felt really uncomfortable that people are gonna see me and think like, oh, what is he doing here in the streets? Is he homeless or something? And then I realized, and if they think that, then what? And I know what's the truth. Why would I care what other people think? So I got close to Castell, but on the way there I met 2 guys, and that was a little bit different than other people I met on the way, because they were really nice, smiling at me, saying hello, and I was like, that's a little bit strange, like people don't often do this. So I was going to a petrol station because that was the only way I can get free Wi-Fi, because I didn't have a phone with me, only my iPad. So I needed free Wi-Fi as soon as I could, so I can contact people, my family could get to know that I didn't get killed or something. And so I went there, and these two guys turn up and say hello again. And I was like, that's like beyond strange now. And I asked them what they are doing. And they said they are hitchhiking, they are traveling, they came from Germany, and they are going to Ozera Festival. And I was like, oh, you're hitchhiking, you're traveling for how long? And they said 2 months. We went through the Alps, walking. For a month now, we couldn't wash our clothes, so we got used to our smells. So we are really comfortable with everything that happens. And I was like, wow, these two guys are traveling for 2 months and hitchhiking. That should work out, because at that point still I had doubts that I could do this. But these two guys actually made me sure that I can do. So long story short, I went with them where they were camping in a tent, and we put up their tents next to each other. We were chatting until like 2 in the morning. We were so like-minded. It's just like finding your best friend, just like this. And I figured at that point, when you get off of everyday's comfort and the daily routine and get yourself into really different situations that is not so usual, you will obviously find people who do the same thing, and that means you're similar, you can connect in a really easy way, because both of you, for example, traveling with a backpack and hitchhiking and doing things that most of the people, like 98% of people, don't do. So obviously you're really easily connected. And it turns out in a few minutes you can create friendships that wouldn't happen in a city in years. And so next day we were walking like 14 kilometers, and for them it was a piece of cake because they've been doing this for 2 months now, and that was my 3rd or 4th day. And after running out, it took like 3 hours, and after running out all the topics you can think of, we were just like slowly and quietly walking. And at that point I realized, wow, that's my birthday. And that was the 21st of July, my birthday, and I thought, I have never had a really good birthday, which you would remember, that like you have a surprise party or something. And my first thought was, I'm surely gonna remember this birthday. Even though I'm just walking with 2 random guys, but this is the thing I've never done before. And we got to Castell and had like a beer and a nice breakfast, laying on the sun. And I had this feeling, this urge, that we need to carry on. Come on, let's get up and go. And I started thinking, to where? Why am I in a hurry? I'm technically homeless, I'm unemployed, all I have really is time. But still it was really, really hard to deal with this huge freedom. If you think of the situation that you're here and you don't have anything to do as long as you can think. Nothing is coming, no appointments, don't need to turn up in school, don't need to show up at work. You do whatever you want. And I was like, that's not really easy to deal with this amount of freedom. And so we said goodbye because I was heading to the border, and close to the border I had a really interesting situation again. This trip, even though it was only 140 days, more strange situations happened to me than probably in my first 20 years. I got to the border, and you must know that hitchhiking is quite easy. After a few days you realize every 100th or 200th car pick you up, which is great if the traffic is huge, because that could be only a few minutes. But when it's really bad traffic, really like only a few cars that are crossing, then it could take hours. And I got to the border, And it turns out, oh, obviously I was really happy. I made it to the Croatian border. I'm leaving my country. Before that, in the last town, I changed all my money into euros. So I did technical bits, and I thought that's gonna be the interesting part. Now I got to the border, and I was walking out when I realized the way ends in the highway only. And you must know that it's illegal to hitchhike on a highway, so you can't just walk on. So I had to wait for someone to pick me up and get me through that with a car. Well, it didn't happen that day. It was close to the evening, and I thought I'm gonna just put my tent down and spend the night there. But it was nothing. If you ever have been there, it's only cornfields and forests. And I was trying to find a good place to settle, but it was a wooden house. It seemed like someone is living there, but I didn't find anyone, and I felt like this is how horror movies start, so I probably shouldn't stay around the house. So I started walking, and there was absolutely no one there. I find a small way in the trees, and I started going there, and suddenly a runner turned up behind me and said, "Hello, not there, there." And I was like, okay. It was as strange, as weird, as I thought I should listen to this guy, because these things just doesn't happen accidentally. I can't believe that. So I walked that way he recommended me. It took me over the highway, down to the other side, and you wouldn't believe what was there. Nothing really. And I didn't understand like why he showed me that way. And so I sat down there and thought I'm going to put my tent up there. Like 10 minutes later, another runner turned up, and I thought, that's just like twice as weird. Like no one's here unless two runners. And I thought I'm going to stop this one and ask where is the closest town. So I asked him where is the closest town, and he said, that's about 20 kilometers. And I was like, really? Did you run here from there? And he said, no, I live in a small village that's about 3 kilometers. Do you have a tent? He asked me. I said, yeah. He said, well, go to our house. He described where his house is, and you can put the tent into our garden. And I was like, thank you. But I also thought, this guy, we have known each other for 45 seconds, and he offered me to stay at their garden. That was really, it's not that I got used to, because I walk in the city every day, and no one offers me to stay at their house. It's really strange. So I walked there because he was going on run because he was trained for a marathon, and I walked to the house, and once he got back, he explained to his mother what's going on, and it was already in Croatia. He was a Croatian guy, and the mother, I remember, mother was sitting on the balcony and saying, "Nema problema," and so they were really welcoming. He also gave me dinner. I could have a shower, first time since I started my journey. And because when you hitchhike on a low budget, it's not every day that you can have a shower. It was really nice. We had a nice chat, and in the morning settled and carried on. I was hitchhiking for about 4 hours that day because still traffic was really poor. And I was about to give up and go to the petrol station, have a drink or something. It was really hot. And a car was coming towards me, and I was like, okay, on the way, try my luck. So I put up my thumb, and this guy stopped. And I asked him, where you're going? Because when you hitchhike, you want to have some kind of connection to the person who stops in a car, because you want to have like a sensation if they're going to be a good person or not, if I want to get into their car or not. So I asked where you're going, and he said some town, I don't know, in Croatian. I didn't know. And I said, I'm going towards Zagreb. Is it closer to Zagreb? He said, yeah, come with me. So I got in, and he obviously asked me where you're going, what you're doing, and I explained that I'm going to Portugal. He asked me, how often do you do that? I said, this is the first time in my life. He asked me how long it's going to take. I said, obviously I don't know, because this is the first time in my life. And he asked me how much it's going to cost you, and I said, I don't know, but it probably wouldn't cost more than 100 euros because that's all my money, so that's quite predictable. And at that point he was laughing his ass off. And laughing for 3 minutes, and I was like, well, what's funny? What's funny in that? And he said, you're crazy. And all I could say is, thank you. I took it as a compliment. Because I would be rather crazy than boring or normal or ordinary. And he started dialing something on his phone, started chatting in Croatian, and then passed me the phone and said, this is my girlfriend. She speaks really good English, so can you explain to her what you're doing? And I talked to a complete random stranger and talking about my journey to a Croatian girl on the phone. And she was like, oh my God, I always wanted to do this. It's so good. I always wanted to travel like that. And I was like, well, all I can suggest is take your backpack, put in your clothes, and then go. Because strangely enough, it's not going to happen just by accident. It's going to happen because you do it. And I also mentioned to the guy who drove the car that the only thing that I really fucked up is as I converted all my money into euros, and I forgot that in Croatia they pay with kuna. So obviously I'm not really gonna help the Croatian economy with my money as long as I stay here, but it's okay, I still have some food, and I should get out in like 2-3 days. 10 minutes later he pulled up the car in a car park of a supermarket and asked me to go with him, put a basket in my hands and put in some water, some bread, and encouraged me to put in whatever I want. And at the till, he paid for the stuff and said, it's yours, because I would like to contribute to your journey. And I felt like, fuck that. Like, not just this guy picked me up on his car in his free time to help me, to a complete stranger, but then he stopped and bought me food for no reason, just because he wanted to help me. And because I realized if you share something from you and you do something extraordinary that other people didn't get used to, and you share this story with them and let them connect to you, they will. And that was one of the most eye-opening situation in my life. So I carried on the journey. I got to Zagreb, and there I went to a petrol station again. And I remember the story from years ago that a friend of mine, a girl with 2 other friends, also girls, went on a similar hitchhiking travels, but I didn't really pay close attention to all this story because I couldn't even connect with the idea. I couldn't even believe or imagine how it is to hitchhike in different countries. But then I remembered that one time she said, sometimes we could go a really long distances because we joined truck drivers and we could go 6-8 hours straight. So that was really fastening up our journey. And I thought I would start that. So I walked up in the morning to different truck drivers and I mentioned them where I'm going to the beach. And they were all really nice, chatty, talked to me, but some of them just started their breaks, which is about 6 hours. They need to stop for 6 hours every 8 hours of driving. And one guy said, yeah, I'm actually going now, but if you're ready, just sit in and you can come. And that was the first time in my life I sat in a truck. That was a 25 tons truck, but that guy drove that shit as if it was a matchbox. He did stuff with that truck that was actually really scary, until the point that he missed an exit on a highway and we ended up in a really high mountain village with tiny roads, really narrow roads. He wasn't afraid. All he said is, oh, sorry about that, it's gonna take longer than usually. And I was like, mate, I have nothing but time, that's fine. But he was so nice that he was worrying about me, not him. And at one point, the car broke down And we were there, and I functioned as a road sign, letting people know that that road is completely blocked because it wouldn't even fit another car next to the track. And he was like so worried. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's never usually happens that the car breaks down and everything." And I was like, "Do you understand that I'm a homeless, unemployed traveler? I don't care if you stay here for a month, honestly." And his journey ended in Slovenia, so I thought, yeah, I'll just come with you, because I felt like I really want to do the second border. So I fastened up my trip a little bit. So I found myself in Ljubljana using Couchsurfing first time in my life as a guest. Has anyone used Couchsurfing before? Ooh, only a few people. That's a really nice social network for travelers, and you can use it if you would like to stay somewhere. Obviously, it depends on who you can connect. Their profiles. You have a profile. They have a profile. They offer the couch. That couch could be their couch in the living room or a spare room, or you can sleep in the floor. People do it for free because they want to meet other people, other travelers. It's a volunteering thing. So I found someone on Couchsurfing that would take me. So I'm in a different country, and I found myself in a house of complete strangers. And that turned out that's a Russian family. And as you can see, they made their own vodka in a kitchen. They had this machine. That's a mayonnaise jar, actually. And that was the guy. A Russian guy, and that was a Polish guy also hitchhiking, and we met at this family. They were hosting us at the same time. So the host said, "Oh, we're doing this really nice vodka in the kitchen, and you must try it." And I was like, not really big fan of spirits, but I'm gonna take one because I want to be a nice guest. So I will take one and then refuse the rest. I'm tired anyways. Then he added to the sentence that the Russian ways, you must drink 7, because that's the right amount. Because then you don't get drunk, but then you can feel that you drank something. And I was like, that doesn't sound good. And he said, "Don't worry, we're gonna eat cooked potato, the Russian way, and you're not gonna get drunk." And it actually worked. That's quite good. I mean, eating potatoes besides drinking vodka. And after the 7th vodka, the only thing I was really glad about is that he didn't say, "You must drink 13. I really didn't want to drink more, so I was ready to go to bed. Then he took a bong. If you don't know what a bong is, that is used for consuming marijuana. And he lit it up and passed around. Turned on music and used those Chinese light bulbs that fills the room with those flashy and crossy lights. Drunk, stoned, listening to weird music and all these flashes. And all I could think of, if someone would have asked me, "What do you expect from this journey? What kind of situations you're going to get in?" I probably wouldn't mention this one. And I thought, that just doesn't happen if you don't go for hitchhiking. So it just never happened to me in my last 20 years. And next day, we spent 3 days there in Ljubljana. We went to the Bled Lake, which is really nice, and then went to Ljubljana. Looking around, I found some really nice spots, learned some really valuable lessons. And met an English guy as well. So, we carried on with Karol, the Polish guy, and we traveled together like 3-4 days. And he organized all his trip before starting it, and he went to circle in Europe and connected to different hosts on Couchsurfing, and his trip was all planned out before. So he really wanted to go to stay in time. he wanted to go to the places in time. It's really difficult to couch surf when you contact someone and they ask when you're coming and you say within 2-4 days. Who knows? Depends on the traffic. So he was really motivated to get there in time, which was good for me because whenever we go to a petrol station, he was like, "Hello, can you take us with your car? Hello, can you take us with your car?" And so within a few hours, we always got to get into the car. That was good for me because he did the job and he had the benefit to travel with me, so it was a win-win situation. So we went 3 days, and loads of truck drivers, for example, are Polish, so he could speak Polish, obviously, so it made it even more easy. We went up to Verona, I think, as I remember, together, and I found a Hungarian truck driver, and he found a Polish one, I guess, and he went to Marseille. That was his next destination, and I wanted to go to Barcelona. So my Hungarian driver said he goes to Girona, which is close to the French-Spanish border. That's pretty close to Barcelona, so I can go with him. And that was the journey of 30 hours in a truck with a Hungarian driver who wasn't really a positive-minded person, to say the least. What I learned, for example, as I mentioned, every 8 hours truck drivers need to stop for 6 hours, and that 6 hours break strictly starts with a coffee, which is made next to the gear shift, gearbox, and a cigarette. So this is how a shift ends. And before they start their journey, coffee again, smoke again. This is the truck driver ritual. What was really interesting about our trip that we were going through the south of France, and you need to know if you ever go there by car that it's really uphill, and there are like it's called the road or the way of 100 tunnels, and each tunnel have different names. But our driver wasn't very worried about the names. He was worried about that it's uphill, and his tragedy was that his truck is really weak, overloaded, and it's going to be so slow, and everyone's going to be warning at us, and everyone's going to be shouting at us and hating us because we're going to be so slow. And the interesting thing to me was that was 2 days ahead. So I was like, why are you worried about something that's in the future? If you can't change it and it's not now, then why are you worried? He didn't really care, so we got to that point, and the effort was his every second, third word, every sentence he used the fuck, this and that, and he was swearing at the car as if the car would care about that. And I didn't understand, like, why don't you just accept the fact that we can't go faster? Like, if someone wants to go faster, then they took us over. But after a while, I wasn't even worried about that one, because what I have seen there was the most beautiful sunset I have ever seen. It was all chromic and million colors, and it felt like endless, like a different dimension, not something that you can describe with words. And I felt like it's as beautiful as if I could have anywhere else in the world. I would choose to be here. It was so beautiful just to look at it. It entertained me, filled me with joy, and I felt like I'm just happy. I think this is what they call happiness. And I thought the only one thing that could make the situation even better, if I would hear that song that stuck in my head for days and I couldn't get Wi-Fi and couldn't listen to that, and you know that feeling when a song stuck in your head and you just can't listen to it. Guess what was the next song in the radio? And I was like, I'm 100% sure that this is what they call a flow state. The perfect experience. When everything just happens perfectly, as it should be, as it serves you. My travel mate didn't experience none of these because he was too busy saying fuck at the truck. But at last we have finished this way, and he got rid of the stress and said, I'm really sorry if I went over the top, but I was just really, a little bit stressed out. And I said, yeah, a little bit, yeah. I was like, yeah, it's fine, no problem. I was too busy watching the sunset. And what he asked shocked me the most. He said, what sunset? And that was like, boom! I instantaneously realized that we spent the last 3-4 hours in the same space, in the 2 square meters. But his experience was completely different than mine. He was somewhere totally else. He probably felt himself in hell, while I felt myself in heaven. And I realized that's so obvious that it doesn't matter what happens to you in life. It doesn't matter where you are at the moment. It only matters that what you're focusing on, what you're experiencing, what you decide to happen to you. So we go to Girona together, and I could have a shower where the truck drivers have a shower, and we were heading towards Barcelona, but I had to skip at one particular place because a friend of mine spent there 3 months working in a hotel, and I thought I'm gonna visit her, so I tried to organize that. So I got off after 30 hours in halfway between Girona and Barcelona, and I went to Lloret de Mar. One thing was about that, I've never been to Spain, and I got to be here to sit in the beach and watch the sunset, and walk around the town, and I spent 2 days there swimming in the sea, and I thought, that's so much better than working. Even though it's no business, it's a little bit better than delivering shoes. And that was the first time I actually technically felt like, well done, Gabor, I'm proud of you. You made this choice. And at that point I actually convinced myself that it doesn't matter what is coming, because I can just let things happen in the right way. I don't need to stress on things, not need to try to control things. If I believe that everything is going to work out in the right way, it will. And my friend suggested me to take the bus because it's really dangerous to hitchhike. And I asked her, do you realize that I got here by hitchhiking and I'm still alive? And she suggested me to take the bus. And I said, no, I actually never meet interesting people in the bus. I never happen to get into a conversation. Whereas when I'm hitchhiking, I always meet interesting people, because obviously if someone stops and take you with their car, they must be an open-minded people. They're not just going to be like, well, I'm afraid of you, I think you're dangerous, but I take you to your car. It just doesn't make sense. So I started walking toward Barcelona, and I found this island, and I asked someone to take a picture of me. And when I uploaded this to Facebook, a friend of mine texted me with capitals saying, "This is the best picture of your life." And I was like, this wouldn't have happened if I took the bus. That happened because I decided to take the harder way, the longer way, but the most adventurous way. So from here, I wanted to go to Barcelona, and you must know that different nations take hitchhiking differently. And for example, Spanish people, they don't really care about you hitchhiking. They're really supportive, waving at you, pulling their horn, clapping, but they don't really think like they could pick you up in their car. So I spent like 2-3 hours hitchhiking each time when I tried in Spain. And the next day after this one was quite a long day, but if Spanish people are not really helpful, then life sends you for Italian guy in a camper van. And they picked me up in a camper van. The guy, actually I didn't realize they stopped because they already passed me and then stopped, came back for me, and the guy had about this big joint in his hand, and they said, "Oh, where are you going?" I said, "Barcelona." They said, yeah, us too, and our final destination is the Cigarettes Festival. And I was like, cool, I can tell you about that. And we arrived to Barcelona. I could practice my faded Italian, so we made friends really easily because I used to study Italian in secondary school. And so we went to Barcelona, and my plan was to find my friend who lives here because we worked together in England, but he moved to Barcelona because it's nicer weather here, and he's a translator, so he could work from anywhere. So I wanted to find him, but he doesn't use Facebook, and I can only contact him through email. He gave me his phone number, but I didn't have a phone with me, so when I got there, it turns out they're not at home, and I just sat down at the house. Next to the house there was a grocery store, and it was a really curious Spanish man asking, "What are you doing?" And I said, I came to James. Señor James, Señor James! It turns out he knew my friend and gave me his phone so I could call him, and he said, "We're at the restaurant, come to the restaurant." And I was like, how do I get to the restaurant? I just take a taxi. And he didn't really realize, that's not the kind of trip where I spent taxi and stuff, but I said, okay, fine. This one time they said, come to the restaurant, we pay you, we buy you dinner, everything. I was like, okay, fine. So I take a taxi. Only problem is that the taxi driver didn't speak English, only Spanish, so I had to find someone in the bus station to translate to me so I could get to the place. So we met and went to a restaurant. And oh yeah, some Barcelona shit. If you haven't been there, there are some parks, and they're all top of hills, so you can see the whole city. Cool stuff. So my friend James, his girlfriend Natalie, and a Spanish friend, they have a vizsla, by the way. And what happened at the restaurant is really remarkable. You need to bear in mind that at this point I was traveling for like 3 weeks, eating cereal bars and fruits, so didn't really eat any cooked food. And 3 weeks is quite enough for anything to get used to, so I got used to this kind of lifestyle. But what I ordered was a fish curry, and that's a really intense dish anyway. But what happened here is the second kind of thing that I couldn't describe in words. I put the first spoon in my mouth and time stopped. And I felt like my brain just crashed. I could see the numbers and the signs coming down like in the movie Matrix. And I felt like it's a huge psychedelic music festival in my mouth, organized by crystal unicorns, and everyone is just having a good time. That was a kind of feeling in my mouth that I just couldn't get out of this feeling. And at the time, it would feel like, that's a nice dish. But after not eating a proper food for 3 weeks, that was just like a kind of sexual experience. I couldn't even talk until I finished. That's what can happen if you give up proper eating for 3 weeks, for example. You will never know if you never try. So I spent a few days in Barcelona, and my plan was, as I mentioned, to get to Lisbon, and then the most western point of Europe. So it was really easy. I was only 1 border away from Portugal. I even checked on the internet. There is a page called Hitchhiking, and that's all for hitchhikers. Tells you where to go if you want to go from here to there, where to start, where to stop, where to stand. So I found a perfect spot. I went there, and for 2 days I asked about 50-60 truck drivers where they are going, because I thought in the second biggest city in Spain they would mostly go to the biggest city or the capital. And strangely enough, no one said that they're going there, or at least they lied or something. But no one wanted to take me. So I only find one truck driver who was willing to take me, and he said he's going to England. And I was like, well, it's better than nothing. Even if I go towards England through France, I can still come back down to Portugal. So I joined this truck driver, and basically pretty much all truck drivers are happy to have a companion. during the travels, and also they are happy that they can practice English because their English normally is just not too good. So what I remembered that I used to share a house with a really interesting and cool guy in England, and once he said to me, because we spent a lot of evenings sitting in the garden and chatting after work, and he said, you know what, all I wanted in my life is just go to France, learn French, and live there. And I'm living in England, working in a kitchen, and I hate it. And I was like, why don't you just go to France? So I showed him that documentary which I watched 10 years ago now, and I said, well, this changed my life, hopefully it will help you. So I didn't see him for a few days, and after that he turned up and said, hey, I bought a ticket to France and I'm leaving in 6 days. So he put all his stuff in a small backpack, and he had like 30 pounds, and that was all his fortune, and went to France. And he was there ever since. I contacted him, where you are exactly, and he explained me. So I said, okay, I'm coming to say hello because I'm on a trip, so let's meet up. He said, okay, fine. So because I couldn't get Wi-Fi on the way in France in the track, even though we stopped sometimes, I didn't know exactly when to quit, when to get off the truck. At some point I said, well, we should be roughly there. But it turns out France is a little bit bigger than it on the map. So where I got off, I still had like a 6-hour drive to get there. So I did that in 2 days. And finally I got there, and we met each other for after a year. He was living in a chateau, a medieval castle that was purchased by an English couple, and they were rebuilding it, and he was working on that thing. Have you ever heard of Workaway? Anyone? Workaway is also a social network, and people or families, organizations, hostels, anything, bio gardens, offer work, and they don't pay you money, they just offer you food and accommodation. So you can stay there, you can eat there, and you work like 5 hours on 5 days a week. So it's 25 hours a week, and you get fed, and you have a place to sleep. This was on Workaway as well, so he was there with that condition, and also a little bit of it. This one is a guy gardener, 50-something years. He actually does Workaway throughout the year in Europe, and when it's winter in Europe, he goes to Australia, do house sitting. It's when people go on holiday and they didn't want to leave their house alone, and being afraid that someone's going to rob them, they just hire people who can stay in their house, and they don't get paid, but they have where to stay and eat. So this guy works like 1 or 2 months for money and just spends 10 months a year traveling and having fun. Other people from New Zealand, and that's his girlfriend from Australia. A lot of cool people I met there. As I mentioned, I just wanted to say hello. I wanted to pop in for 2 days or a week and then going to Portugal. But the thing is, I started working there under these conditions, 5 hours, 5 days a week. And it turns out it's quite fun. You do the same things what you did when you were 5 years old, building a castle, basically. And you do concrete, you build walls, build roads, different kind of things. And that was the property actually. That was a complete ruin 8 years ago, and they started to rebuild with Workaway, so they didn't pay for nothing except for their materials. And we built this wall, for example, did some bits of gardening, and I actually learned from experts, because most of these people were builders, gardeners, and different kind of experts. And what was really nice also that I built a road. I built that one, and that wall. That's a guy from New Zealand, and he played rugby in New Zealand, and New Zealand is quite good at rugby. But his dream was playing France and get paid. So he came to France to Workaway, and in that town where we were staying, he found a team which was a lower level that he used to play in New Zealand. So he was the best at that team. He was the star instantaneously. they found him a proper job, gave him a car, and he could play for a team. So he came there, tried his luck, he won. Because winners win, and winners win big time. And he's a winner. And what I really loved about the thing is that every lunch and dinner we spent together. So that was the couple hosting us, Chris and Rachel did the meals. So actually for 25 hours a week, I got to stay in a castle, which I couldn't afford otherwise if I had to spend money on that. I got 3 meals a day cooked by someone who is cooking better than me. I had free Wi-Fi, they taught me French, I met a lot of people, and I also got some business lessons from Chris. That was the first time I actually understood internet marketing and how you can earn money online. None of these would have happened if I stayed at home. Nevertheless, if you work 25 hours basic, low-skill work in the city, you can barely afford the room to rent. And I was staying in a castle. So fucked up things can happen when you get out of your routine. That was my last day spending there, cooking them guyash, because I promised them, and then the last day I said, oh, this is my last chance to do it, so I did it. Wasn't the best, but wasn't really bad either. Oh, I tried this gravity glue stuff because we had a lot of rocks. It's quite fun. And what happened is that I started organizing a community at the beginning of that year, 2015, and it's based on self-development and consciousness. And I started out with my friends. And it was only a closed group on Facebook, and I thought, I had this impression that I should do it in a bigger scale. So I decided that I'm going to go home, I'm going to start organizing this community even better, putting in even more work, and I'm going to do the thing that I was procrastinating the most. I'm going to give my first motivational talk. Didn't know how, didn't know who's going to listen to me, but I'm going to try. So I decided that I'm going to come home, and I put up an event on Facebook, a free event, and all my intention was to share the experience with my friends and family. We used to have every month, and I thought the people from there, my friends and my family, I invite, it's about 30-40 people, and everyone can hear the story, and I win because I don't need to tell 40 times the story because I will get bored. The only thing I didn't count into the equation is that 4,000 people clicked on the event, so it was 4,000 people interested in that event. And I was like, I don't know where to put them. I was a little bit worried. A friend of mine worked at ELTA, so we could get a huge conference hall that could sit 300 people. So we put up a registration because we didn't know they actually will come or not. That registration filled in 13 minutes, the 300 seats. And I was like, fuck that's gonna happen. I need to actually go home and stand in front of 300 people. That's gonna be fun, or at least interesting. So my only problem is that I only had 8 euros at this point, so 100 euros I didn't even spend by the time I got here. That was the 139th day, and I needed to figure out how I'm going to get home because it was December now. It was really cold to stay in a tent on the streets, and I didn't want to hitchhike home, but I had to get home by the time of the talk. So I asked my mom to sell my laptop and transfer the money she receives for the laptop to my bank account so I could buy a cheap flight. But the thing is, the flight was cheaper than me buying a train ticket to Paris. The train ticket was more expensive than the plane ticket, so I needed to find out how I'm going to get to Paris because I didn't really have much more money. So I found this BlaBlaCar. It's a car sharing thing like Oscar, Talakochi. And I found some really nice French people, a farmer guy and his wife, and they took me to Paris. Because the problem was, my plane was departing on Sunday, 1 p.m., 1 in the afternoon, but nothing was early enough to get me in that day, so I had to go on Saturday. But I didn't have any money for a hostel or something. I couldn't even pay for one night in a hostel. So I had to find someone on Couchsurfing who helps me. or someone through a friend, or alternatively stay in a 24-hour McDonald's, just sitting there by the morning eating one French fries. And I found the guy, and that was a really interesting story because I had to travel outside of Paris to get to his house. And when I got there, I didn't have a phone still, and I couldn't call him, but no one was there. And I was like, if now I get outside of the station, I can't get back to inside. And what I'm going to do there, it's like it was nothing there, just blocks of houses, not even a pub or nothing. And he was sitting in the car because it was cold, and I took my chance. I went outside, and I got off the car and said, yeah, that's me. So I went to his house. But only spent like 3 hours there, from 3 in the morning until 6, because then I had to go back, but at least I will stay at a safe, warm place. So I got to, I had a chance to walk around Paris. That was my second time in Paris, and I walked around. I really enjoyed, and when I got to the plane, I think there is more slides. No more slides. Okay. So I was sitting on a plane, and I was thinking, wow, I actually took my chance, spent 140 days traveling on €100 budget, and if I would have asked anyone, they would have said that's impossible or not likely to succeed. And it happened because I did, and I had so much help, a kinds of help that no one could have predicted. No one could have said, yeah, there's going to be a guy who will invite you to stay in their garden. There's going to be another guy who buys you food. There's going to be a guy in Paris who offers his house to stay there. Who knows? You will never know this unless you try. And the thing is, I came home, I went to the talk, and I gave the talk to 300 people, and that was my actual thing to be fulfilled, because a few years back I realized what I want to do for a living, what suits me most, is giving motivational talks, helping other people to follow their dreams. The only two things I never knew, that who's going to listen to me and what I'm going to actually talk about properly, like what's going to be the topic. But without me knowing about it, this journey gave me the topic, gave me the story, and out of the 4,000 people, at least 300 could fit in the room, so I had an audience. And I think the moral of the story is that you can achieve anything, even beyond your imagination. The only thing is, it's not going to happen unless you start doing steps. One by one, small steps. You can start by getting out of your comfort zone and start hitchhiking. And once you're okay with that, you can go to different countries. But it's not only with the travels, you can do it in any field of life. You can start talking to strangers, you can organize events, you can start learning a new topic. It's anything you can do, you just need to believe in yourself. And so that's the beginning of the year, this year. It's only January. So you have still plenty of time this year doing something that you're still afraid of, but I'm sure you know what you need to do. And I would like to invite you to be honest with yourself and find that one thing that you're really procrastinating on, but you know this is what you want to do, and do that this year. And you're not going to regret. Thank you.